She knew I had cancer, but she left anyway, taking our entire $45,000 savings and texting. I didn't sign up for this. She had no idea I'd take it all back. My name is Jack Sullivan, and this is the story of how I was betrayed by the person I loved most, right when I faced the fight of my life. From a Chicago auto shop to the lawyer's conference room, I battled cancer and deception, reclaiming what was mine with patience, intelligence, and quiet dignity. This isn't just a revenge story. It's a story about justice, about standing tall when someone thinks they've broken you. I stood in the parking lot of Rush Hospital in Chicago, clutching my phone, my breath forming faint clouds in the 42-degree Fahrenheit chill of April 2024. I just left the doctor's office, my head still reeling with words like lymphoma, stage 2 chemotherapy, and survival rates. Me, Jack Sullivan, 34 years old, head mechanic at O'Malley's Auto in Portage Park. Never thought I'd hear those words. But there I was, under a gray sky, trying to steady myself to call my wife, Claire Bennett. I dialed, waiting. Claire picked up after 3 rings, her voice flat. "What's up, Jack? I'm at the store." I took a deep breath, my voice shaking slightly. "Claire, I just left the hospital. They found cancer. Lymphoma, stage 2. I need you home by 6 to talk." Silence stretched on. Then she said, her tone devoid of warmth, "Okay, I'm tied up with some errands. I'll be back later." No questions, no comfort, just a cold, "Okay." I drove my Ford pickup through Chicago's familiar streets, passing the Chicago River glinting under the fading sunset, trying to piece my thoughts together. Claire and I had been together for 9 years, married for 6. We met in the fall of 2015 at a bar in Wicker Park, during my buddy Ray's wedding. Claire, with her blonde hair and a smile that made me forget how to hold my beer, was a paralegal at a downtown law firm. She was sharp, witty, and always commanded attention. 6 months later, we moved into a small apartment in Logan Square. A year after that, we got married at a little church in Evanston. September sunlight streaming through stained glass windows like a promise of forever. We bought a red brick house in Portage Park, 4 miles from my auto shop. The house was old, with a sloped roof and a small backyard. But it was our dream. I spent weekends replacing hardwood floors, fixing plumbing, painting walls with sweat and motor oil. Claire picked out curtains, posted before and after photos on social media, calling us the perfect Reno couple. We saved every penny. I pulled extra shifts at the shop. Claire managed our joint account at Chase Bank. After 5 years, we had $45,000, enough to dream of opening our own garage or buying a plot of land in Wisconsin. I thought we were a team, no matter the rough days. But the cracks had been there for a while. Like fissures in a wall, we tried to hide with fresh paint. Claire grew up in Naperville, in a wealthy family. Her father, Richard Bennett, a corporate attorney, always looked at me like I was beneath him. He called me Claire's husband, as if my name wasn't worth remembering. Her mother, Ellen, was politely cold, always asking when I'd do something bigger than fixing cars. Claire started talking about moving to Seattle, where she believed there were better opportunities. I pushed back. My job was solid. The house was nearly paid off. Our friends were here. She grew distant, spending more time with friends I'd never met. Her small comments cut deeper than they should have. "Jack, don't you want to do something more than wrench on cars?" she asked one night, as we ate pizza on the couch. "My college roommate's husband just bought a vacation home in Aspen," she said, her eyes drifting. Once I found a business card for a Seattle apartment complex in her purse. I didn't confront her. I told myself every marriage has rough patches. I thought we'd work through it. I was dead wrong. When I got home that night after the hospital call, the house felt as cold as an abandoned lot. Half the closet was empty. Claire's Samsonite suitcase, the green one she loved, was gone. The wedding photo on the nightstand, taken by the Chicago River with us grinning under the sun, was missing. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "I didn't sign up for this." Attached was a screenshot of our joint account. The $45,000. My sweat from late-night shifts, from weekends bent over engines, had been transferred to an account in her name only. The transaction timestamp, 4:42 p.m. Just 47 minutes after I called her from the hospital parking lot, I sank onto the couch, staring at the phone screen, feeling the floor drop out from under me. 5 years of savings. 5 years of trust. 5 years of building a life together. Gone in a 5-word text. Claire knew I had cancer. I'd told her. My voice breaking. Right after leaving the doctor's office, she didn't ask how I was feeling. Didn't ask about the disease. Didn't ask what I needed. She just said, "Okay." And 47 minutes later, cleaned out our account. That truth stabbed into my chest.
Sharper than any pain I'd ever known. I typed back, fingers stiff. Take care. Then I set the phone down, grabbed a Miller Lite from the fridge, and stepped out to the backyard. The sunset stretched across Portage Park, painting Chicago's sky a blazing orange. I sat on the old wooden chair, my hand closing around my father's pocket watch, the heirloom he left me before he died of a heart attack. When I was 12, my dad worked at a steel mill in Southside, up at 5 a.m. every day, to provide for me and my sister Sarah. He used to say, "Jack, time teaches patience."
Don't rush, but don't quit. The watch with its scratched glass and steady ticking second hand was the only thing I had left of him. I flipped it open, listening to the familiar sound, searching for some calm in the storm that had just hit. Cancer, I could face. I'd watched my mom battle lung disease before she passed 2 years ago. I knew it took strength, grit, and a bit of luck. But Claire's betrayal, knowing she heard me say I had cancer, knowing I needed her more than ever, and still choosing to take our money and run, that was something I wasn't prepared for. It was a punch to the chest, harder than anything I'd ever felt. Mike Walsh, my neighbor, saw me sitting there through the wooden fence. Mike, a retired railroad worker with a weathered face and a gravelly voice, was holding a Budweiser. "Everything okay, Jack?" he asked. Saw Claire peel out of here with her car stuffed full. I took a sip of my beer, keeping my voice steady. "Got some bad health news. Cancer. Claire, she couldn't handle it." Mike nodded, not pressing for more. "Karen makes a hell of a casserole. You need anything, you holler." "Got it." He clapped my shoulder through the fence and headed back to his house. I watched him go, grateful for his no-nonsense kindness. In Chicago, neighbors don't pry, but they're there when you need them. I went back inside, opening an old drawer in the living room. Inside was a folder of documents my uncle, Tom Hargrove, had given me a few months back. Tom, a retired estate planner, had helped me sort out paperwork when my grandfather passed, leaving me a small plot of land in Wisconsin. "Always be prepared, Jack," he'd said, "especially when you're married. Protect each other." I'd started updating my will, adding Claire to the title of the '67 Corvette I'd restored with 3 years of sweat and love. But I hadn't filed the final paperwork with the DMV. I'd also opened a separate account at Chase for the proceeds from the land sale that was coming up, all to protect her. Looking back, it was laughable. I held the folder, flipping through the pages. My breathing slowed. Claire thought I'd crumble. She thought I'd scream, beg, or fade away. But she didn't know I grew up in a working-class family in Southside, where my dad taught me that your fate isn't what others do to you. It's how you respond. I didn't need to yell. I had the truth, and the truth is always louder than any words. I picked up my phone and called Tom. When he answered, his voice steady as ever, I said, "Remember that talk we had about estate planning? I need to make some changes." He paused. "What's going on, Jack?" "It's not good," I said, my voice low but firm. "But it's gonna be." Claire thought she'd won when she took our $45,000 and left me with a cancer diagnosis, but she didn't know I'd learned from my father. Time and truth always side with the patient. Sitting in the empty house in Portage Park, clutching my dad's pocket watch, I knew I didn't need to scream or chase her. I needed a plan. Cold, calculated, unrelenting plan. That night, when I called my Uncle Tom, I took the first steps to take back what was mine. I woke up the next morning with a head heavy as concrete. The house in Portage Park was silent, save for the faint ticking of the living room clock. I looked around, the walls I'd painted, the hardwood floors I'd replaced, all now a reminder of what Claire had shattered. But I didn't let myself sink into the pain. My dad, a steel mill worker in Southside, used to say, "When life hits you, don't stand there whining. Find a way to hit back." And that's exactly what I was going to do. I brewed a pot of black coffee, strong, like my dad used to make, and sat at the kitchen table. I opened the folder of documents my uncle Tom Hargrove had given me a few months back. Tom, 62, was a retired estate planner from Oak Park. When my grandfather passed in February, leaving me a 10-acre plot of land in Wisconsin, Tom had helped me sort out the paperwork. "Always have a backup plan, Jack," he'd said, his voice steady like a man who'd seen every side of life, especially when you're married. Protect each other. I'd started updating my will, adding Claire to the title of the '67 Corvette I'd restored, a 3-year project that was my pride and joy. But I hadn't filed the final paperwork with the DMV. I'd also opened a separate account at Chase Bank for the proceeds from the upcoming land sale, expected to be $65,000, all to protect her, to secure our future. Thinking back, I could only laugh at my own naivety. I grabbed a pen and started jotting notes, bank statements, I needed to confirm the exact time Claire transferred the $45,000. The text. I didn't sign up for this. I screenshotted it, saving it to a folder on my laptop labeled Truth. The business card for a Seattle apartment complex I'd found in Claire's purse last week. I clipped it to the folder. Each detail was a puzzle piece, and I knew they'd tell a bigger story when the time came. Claire knew I had cancer. I'd called her from the hospital parking lot, my voice shaking, and told her straight about the stage 2 lymphoma. She'd said, okay, and 47 minutes later, cleaned out our account. That truth didn't make me angry. It made me sharp. I called Tom at 8 a.m. He picked up right away, his voice alert despite the early hour. Jack, you holding up? You sounded off last night. I took a deep breath and laid it all out. Cancer, Claire, the money, the text. She knew I had cancer, I said, my voice low. I called her right after leaving the hospital, told her it was lymphoma, stage 2. She said, okay, as in 47 minutes later. Took everything. Tom was quiet for a moment, then let out a heavy sigh. She didn't just leave you, Jack. She tried to hurt you when you were at your weakest. This isn't just wrong. It might be illegal. What do I do now? I asked. Don't do anything yet, he said. Meet me at my office at 10. Bring everything, bank statements, texts, the works. I nodded, even though he couldn't see. Thanks, Tom. I drove my Ford pickup to Tom's office in Oak Park, 7 miles from home. The small office, tucked on a quiet street lined with old oak trees, smelled of aged wood and burnt coffee. Tom sat behind his desk, silver hair mussed, eyes sharp as a blade. I handed him the folder and recounted every detail, from the call with Claire to the moment I saw the empty account. When I showed him her text, he frowned. This is gold, Jack. This text, paired with the bank statement, shows she acted right after knowing you were sick. That's evidence of intent. He flipped through the documents, pointing to the Corvette title. You haven't filed this with the DMV yet, right? Not yet, I said. Was gonna do it next month. Good, he said. Cancel her name immediately. In the Wisconsin land, we need to lock it down. Make sure she can't touch it. Can she get to it? I asked. Tom smirked. Not if we move first. She thinks you're falling apart, but we're gonna surprise her. Tom called Laura Mitchell, a divorce lawyer in Chicago he'd known from his working days. Laura, about 40, had a razor-sharp voice and eyes that missed nothing. I met her at Tom's office that afternoon, bringing my laptop and the folder. Laura reviewed the bank statements, texts, and the Seattle apartment card, listening to my story with the focus of a hunter. Claire thinks you're easy prey, Jack, she said, tapping her pen on the desk. She's wrong. We've got the text, the bank records, and the transaction timing, all showing she knew you were sick and still took the money. This is financial abandonment during a medical crisis. Courts don't take kindly to that. What's next? I asked. Laura leaned forward. We lock down your assets. The Corvette, the land, the secondary account. Then we build the case. Collect everything, emails, texts, even that apartment card. She was planning to leave long before this, wasn't she? I nodded. She's been talking about Seattle for months. Said it had bigger opportunities. Laura's smile was cold. Perfect. That shows premeditation. We'll make her pay. I left the office with a to-do list. Check the joint safe deposit box at Chase Bank, where we kept the house deed, car title, and my grandfather's will. Remove Claire's name from the Corvette and save every communication from her. Laura stressed, don't contact her, Jack. Let her think you're breaking. We need the element of surprise. The next morning I went back to O'Malley's Auto, trying to focus on a Chevy Silverado repair, but my mind was elsewhere. Ray, my coworker, a burly guy with a bushy beard and a no-nonsense attitude, noticed right away. You look like you got hit by a truck, Jack. What's going on? I gave him the short version. Cancer, Claire the money. Ray shook his head, tossing his wrench onto the workbench with a clang. She's trash. You need me to rough someone up? I gave a small laugh. My first in 3 days. I got this, Ray, but thanks. I also called Nick, a buddy from my Army days, now a financial advisor in Milwaukee. When I told him the story, his voice dropped. Jack, I've seen this before. She's not just taking your money, she's playing dirty. Don't let her walk away. Laura's the right call. Nick promised to come to Chicago that weekend to help sort out my financials, bringing a case of beer and some sense. The next day, I went to the Chase Bank downtown, 3 miles from the shop. The branch had rows of cubicles, humming air conditioning, and the stale smell of old paperwork. I asked to check our joint safe deposit box. The teller, a middle-aged woman named Janet, Check the records. Someone tried to access this box yesterday, but didn't have the second key, she said, peering over her glasses. Claire Bennett. My blood surged. Claire. She didn't just take the $45,000. She's still digging. I kept my voice steady. I want to close this box and open a new one, just in my name. Janet nodded, walking me through the process, handing me a new key and a stack of documents. I left the bank with the papers secure, feeling like I'd won a small chess move, but the real fight was still ahead. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the bank statement. The $45,000 transfer happened at 4:42 p.m. on April 15th, just 47 minutes after I called Claire from the hospital and told her about the cancer. I stared at her text. I didn't sign up for this and felt not anger, but something colder, sharper, resolve. The next day, I drove to the DMV on Chicago's west side, 5 miles from home, to remove Claire's name from the Corvette title. The clerk, a guy named Carl with a monotone voice, looked over the papers. You didn't file the final version, so this is easy. She's got no claim to the car anymore. I nodded, feeling like I'd locked a door. Claire could never reopen. The Corvette, with its glossy black paint and roaring engine, was something I'd poured sweat and heart into. She didn't deserve to touch it. That weekend, Nick showed up from Milwaukee, hauling a case of Miller Lite and a laptop loaded with financial software. We sat in my backyard, under the 68-degree Fahrenheit, April heat, going through every account I had. Nick pointed at the screen. She didn't touch this secondary account, right? Nope, I said. I opened it for the land sale. She doesn't know about it. Nick grinned, raising his beer. Smart, keep it under wraps, and listen to Laura. She'll tear Claire apart if this goes to court. I started chemo the following Tuesday at Rush Hospital. The first session hit like a series of gut punches. The nurse, a woman named Maria with a gentle smile, led me to a recliner and hooked up the IV. Your family in the waiting room? She asked. Came by Uber. I said, my voice hoarse. My wife's out of town. Maria patted my shoulder, her eyes full of quiet sympathy. The first one's the toughest, Jack. You'll get through. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, afraid my voice would crack. I hadn't told anyone except Tom, Nick, and Sarah that Claire was gone for good, not just out of town. Saying it out loud would make it real, make it shameful. When I got home, I found a casserole on the front porch with a note from Karen Walsh. Made too much. Enjoy. I knew it was a lie, but Karen's kindness made my eyes sting. I tried to eat, but couldn't keep anything down. That night, I ended up on the bathroom floor, sweating, shaking, alone. I thought about Claire, her text, the fact that she knew I was sick but chose to take the money and run. That truth didn't make me angry. It made me stronger, like steel forged in fire. That evening, I called my sister Sarah in Madison. Sarah, 3 years older than me, is an elementary school teacher, tough as our mom was. I told her everything. Cancer, Claire. The $45,000. Sarah practically shouted through the phone. She did what? Jack, I'm driving up there right now. Hold on, sis, I said. I'm handling it. Sarah sighed. You're too much like Dad. Always calm, even when the world's falling apart. But you're not alone. You hear me? I smiled, even though she couldn't see. I hear you, sis. The next evening, I sat by the Chicago River, 2 miles from home, holding my dad's pocket watch. The water shimmered under the streetlights, and the watch's steady ticking reminded me that time was on my side. Claire thought she'd won, but she didn't know I was building a trap made of truth, patience, and numbers that never lie. By the Chicago River, holding my dad's pocket watch, I felt the strength of patience and truth. Claire thought she'd gotten away with taking our $45,000 and leaving me to fight cancer alone. But with the help of Uncle Tom, lawyer Laura, and friends like Nick, I'd built an airtight plan. Every bank statement, every text, every piece of evidence was a loaded bullet ready to fire. Now it was time for the truth to speak, and I'd make sure Claire heard every word. 3 weeks into chemo, I got a letter from Claire's lawyer, delivered by mail to my house in Portage Park. The letter, with bold letterhead from a downtown Chicago law firm, demanded a divorce citing irreconcilable differences. Claire wanted half the house I'd poured sweat into fixing up over long weekends, but didn't mention a word about the $45,000 she'd taken. I sat at the kitchen table, the letter in one hand, my dad's pocket watch in the other, its steady ticking anchoring me. Claire knew I had cancer. She'd heard me say it, my voice breaking, in that call from the hospital parking lot. Yet here she was, demanding more, as if she hadn't already taken everything. I took the letter to Laura Mitchell's office downtown, 6 miles from home. Laura's office was on the 12th floor of a glass building, overlooking the Chicago River and the bustling streets below. Laura, in a sharp navy suit, skimmed the letter, her eyes cutting like a blade. "Bold move," she said, her voice even but cold. "She takes your $45,000 the day she learns you're sick, and now she wants half the house. She thinks you'll fold without a fight." "What do we do?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Laura smiled, a smile with no warmth. "We let her keep digging her own grave. Don't respond to this letter. Let her think she's in control. Meanwhile, we finalize the case." Laura already had the bank statements, the "I didn't sign up for this" text, and the Seattle apartment business card, but she wanted more. "We need a witness," Laura said. "Someone who can confirm Claire knew you had cancer before she left." I immediately thought of Emily Carter, Claire's cousin, who'd always been friendly to me. I'd saved an email from Emily, sent a few days after Claire left. "Jack, I heard what happened. Claire told the family, you have cancer, but said she couldn't handle it and needed a fresh start. My family's shocked. This isn't right." I showed Laura the email. She read it, nodding. "This is the missing piece. Emily can testify that Claire knew about your diagnosis and still chose to take the money. With this email, the bank records, and the text, we've got a watertight case." Meanwhile, chemo was tearing me apart. My third session at Rush Hospital, 4 miles from home, left me 10 pounds lighter and unable to keep down a slice of bread. Nurse Maria, with her gentle smile, checked my IV and asked, "How you holding up today, Jack?" "Worse than yesterday," I said, forcing a grin. "But I'm still here." She patted my hand. "You're stronger than you know." When I got home, I found a text from an unknown number. "Jack, it's Claire. This is my new number. You're being childish. I have rights to the house." I stared at the screen, feeling my blood surge. Childish? She knew I was fighting cancer, knew I needed that money for chemo, but still took our $45,000 and now wanted more. I didn't reply. I blocked the number, as Laura had instructed. A week later, another letter arrived from Claire's lawyer, this time threatening to sue if I didn't agree to split the assets. I brought it to Laura. She shook her head. "She's panicking. She knows she has no legal ground, but she's trying to scare you." "Are we ready to hit back?" I asked. "Not yet," Laura said. "Let her shoot herself in the foot. But get ready. She might have help. Probably her father, Richard Bennett." Richard, a corporate attorney in Naperville, had always seen me as unworthy of his daughter. I remembered Christmas parties at his house, where he'd introduce me as Claire's husband with a fake smile. Laura suspected Richard was behind Claire's moves, possibly using connections to track me. "She knew you removed her name from the Corvette title too fast," Laura said. "Someone at the DMV or bank might be feeding her info." I nodded, feeling like I was playing chess with an invisible opponent. But I had Laura, Tom, and a mountain of evidence, and I had time. Something my dad's pocket watch always reminded me to use wisely. 2 weeks later, I got a surprise. An email from Emily Carter. "Jack, I just talked to Claire. She told the family you have cancer but said she couldn't stay because it was too much pressure. I don't agree. I want to help. Call me if you need me." I forwarded the email to Laura immediately. "This is the final bullet," Laura said. "Emily's willing to testify. We're ready." Laura and I started preparing our own divorce filing. The petition accused Claire of abandoning me during a medical crisis, committing financial fraud by taking the $45,000, and attempting to hide the money through her parents, Richard and Ellen Bennett. Laura had discovered Claire transferred $40,000 to Richard right after taking the money, likely to conceal the assets. "This is her biggest mistake," Laura said, pointing to a copy of the check. "Courts hate hidden marital assets, especially in a case like yours." The day I left the hospital after my 5th chemo session, I spotted Richard Bennett's silver Lexus, parked in the Rush Hospital lot. He was sitting inside, wearing sunglasses, watching the entrance. I walked straight to his car and knocked on the window. He lowered it, his face as composed as ever. "Jack," he said, his voice flat. "You look unwell. Cancer'll do that," I replied, keeping my tone even. "What are you doing here?" "Claire's concerned," he said. "You're not cooperating with the divorce proceedings. She wants to settle this cleanly." I almost laughed. "Concerned? After she took our $45,000 the day I was diagnosed? After she left me to deal with chemo alone?" Richard frowned,
but stayed calm. She panicked, Jack. People make mistakes. Be practical. You're sick. You need to focus on your health, not a legal fight you can't afford. His words were a punch, but I didn't flinch. He thought I was desperate, broke, and out of moves. He didn't know I'd removed Claire's name from the Corvette title, secured the Wisconsin land, and had evidence from text to checks. Tell Claire I'll have my response to her lawyer by Friday, I said, turning away. Jack, he called after me. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I didn't look back. That Friday, Laura sent our divorce filing to Claire's lawyer, attached with a thick packet of evidence. Bank statements. Yeah, I didn't sign up for this. Text Emily's email. The $40,000 check to Richard, and medical records proving I was diagnosed with cancer before Claire took the money. The petition demanded Claire return the $45,000, relinquish all claims to the house, the Corvette, the Wisconsin land, and cover all legal fees. If not, we'd pursue criminal charges for fraud and abandonment. By noon, Claire's lawyer called, his voice shaky, requesting an emergency meeting for Monday. Laura grinned as she hung up. They didn't expect you to have this much ammo. They thought you were weak, broken, beaten. They were wrong. Over the weekend, I rested at home, trying to regain strength after chemo. My sister Sarah called from Madison, her voice thick with worry. How you doing, Jack? I want to come up there. I'm going to come up there. I'm okay, sis, I said. They said, things are falling into place. Monday's the big day. You're too much like Dad, Sarah said. Always calm even when you're fighting the whole world, you're fighting the whole world. I'm proud of you. I smiled, praying when you're fighting the home. Thanks, sis. Sunday night, I got a text from another unknown number. Jack, it's Claire. You're being cruel. I messed up, but you're trying to destroy me. My parents can't pay back the $40,000 right now. So yeah.
Stop this. I stared at the screen, feeling not anger but clarity. Cruel? I wasn't the one who abandoned a sick spouse. I wasn't the one who stole and ran. I typed back, actions have consequences. Then I blocked the number. Monday morning I arrived at Laura's office, 6 miles from home. Laura and Tom were already there, ready. Laura coached me. Sit tight, Jack. Let me do the talking. Only answer if asked directly. Claire showed up with Richard and her lawyer, a thin guy with expensive glasses and a permanent scowl. Claire looked healthy, tanned, like she'd been on vacation while I'd lost 15 pounds to chemo. She avoided my eyes, staring at the table. Claire's lawyer spoke first. We've reviewed your filing. While we disagree with your characterization, my client is willing to negotiate to avoid conflict. Laura cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. There's no negotiation. This is a courtesy meeting before we go to court. Your client abandoned her husband the day he was diagnosed with cancer, took $45,000 from their joint account, funneled $40,000 to her parents to hide it, then demanded the house. We have everything: bank records, texts, an email from her cousin, and medical records. Richard leaned forward, trying to interrupt. Surely we can reach a reasonable. Laura shut him down. Your daughter took her husband's medical emergency funds and gave them to you. We have the check. Will you return the money today, or do we add you to the lawsuit for receiving fraudulent assets? The room went silent. Claire shifted in her seat, her face paling. Her lawyer cleared his throat. What are you asking for? Laura laid out the terms. Claire returns the $45,000. Relinquishes all claims to the house, the Corvette, the Wisconsin land, and pays legal fees. If not, we'd pursue criminal charges. This isn't robbery, Laura said, staring at Richard. Robbery is what your daughter did. This is justice. The meeting ended with Claire's lawyer asking for 48 hours to consider. As we left the room, Claire tried to catch my eye. I walked past her without slowing. In the elevator, Tom clapped my shoulder. You did good, Jack. I didn't do anything, I said. Just sat there. Sometimes that's the hardest part, he replied. Back home, sitting on the couch, holding my dad's pocket watch, I felt the weight of the moment. The truth was out, and Claire had nowhere to run. My dad used to say, time teaches patience, but truth teaches victory. I'd been patient, and now, I was on the verge of winning. In Laura's conference room, the truth shattered Claire's illusions. With a mountain of evidence, bank statements, texts, Emily's email, she had nowhere to run. Claire thought she could take our $45,000 and leave me to face cancer alone. But she didn't know that patience and justice always win. As I left the office, clutching my dad's pocket watch, its steady ticking felt like a confirmation. The battle was nearly over and I'd come out on top. Now it was time for everything to settle, for me to move forward with dignity and a new life. 2 days after the meeting, Laura called while I was sitting in my backyard in Portage Park, holding a Miller Lite and watching the Chicago sunset paint the sky orange. "Jack, we won," Laura said, her voice brimming with satisfaction. Claire and her parents agreed to every term. They'll return the $45,000 within 30 days. She's relinquishing all claims to the house, the Corvette, the Wisconsin land, and covering all legal fees. I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. They didn't push back? No chance, Laura said. Our evidence was too strong. If this went to court, she'd lose everything and face potential criminal charges. They know it. "Thank you, Laura," I said, my voice hoarse. "You did more than I could have hoped." "You gave me the ammo," she replied. "Now focus on your health. Leave the rest to me." I hung up, opened my dad's pocket watch, and listened to its steady ticking. Claire knew I had cancer. I'd told her clearly in that call from the Rush Hospital parking lot, my voice trembling. She still chose to take the money and run, thinking I'd crumble. But she was wrong. The truth, as my dad always said, finds a way to come out. And now, justice had been served. 30 days later, a $45,000 cashier's check arrived in the mail, signed by Richard Bennett. I took it to the Chase Bank branch, 3 miles from home, and deposited it immediately. Then I called the doctor's office at Rush Hospital to pay down part of the mounting medical bills. Nurse Maria, who'd been with me since my first chemo session, took the check at the front desk. "You're looking better," she said, smiling. "Your labs from last week were strong." "Feeling better too," I said, handing over the check. She glanced at the amount. "Insurance came through." "Something like that," I replied, smirking. A week later, I signed the divorce papers at Laura's office. Sitting at her desk, I felt a strange emptiness. Not sadness, not anger, just done. Laura slid the pen toward me, her eyes soft. "You okay, Jack?" "I'm good," I said. "Just thought things would turn out different." "You did the right thing," Uncle Tom, sitting beside me, said. "You kept your dignity. Not everyone can say that." As we left the office, I asked Tom, "What now?" "Finish chemo," he said. "Get your strength back. Figure out what's next. The Wisconsin land should sell next month, another $65,000. And if you want to sell the Corvette, not yet," I cut in. "I'm not ready to let go of everything." That evening, I sat in my backyard with a glass of water, watching Chicago's sunset for the last time. Chemo still left me drained, but the nausea had eased. My hair was growing back, patchy but real. The doctors were starting to use words like responding well and promising outlook. I felt a spark of hope, small but bright, for the first time since Claire walked out. My phone buzzed. An email from Emily Carter. "Jack, heard everything's finalized. I'm so sorry for what my family did to you. Claire's parents had to sell their Michigan cabin to cover the money. My aunt's still blaming you, but I know the truth. You deserve better." I read the email but didn't reply. Claire's family wasn't my problem anymore. I'd fought, and I'd won. Now it was time to heal. 6 months later, at Rush Hospital, my doctor looked at me over his glasses and smiled. "Complete remission, Jack. No signs of active cancer." I sat there letting the words settle. Not cured. Lymphoma could come back any time. But for now, I'd won this battle. "What's next?" I asked. "Regular checkups, blood work, scans every 6 months," he said. "But for now, Jack, go live your life." I left the hospital feeling like I'd walked out of a long tunnel. I called Sarah right away. She screamed through the phone, her voice breaking with joy. "Jack, I knew you'd do it. I'm coming up this weekend." "Thanks, sis," I said, laughing louder than I had in months. Next, I called Nick in Milwaukee. "Still got room for me at your auto shop?" "Hell yeah," Nick said. "When you starting?" A month later, I sold the Portage Park house. The money was enough to buy a small cabin by the Fox River in Wisconsin, 120 miles from Chicago. The cabin had 2 bedrooms, a garage big enough for the Corvette and my tools, and a view of rolling green hills. The day I left Chicago, Mike and Karen Walsh came to say goodbye. Karen handed me a casserole for the road. "You doing okay, Jack?" Mike asked. "Really okay?" I thought about it. Getting there. 3 months after moving to Wisconsin, I started working at Nick's auto shop. The familiar routine, smell of motor oil, hum of engines, feel of metal under my hands, was like medicine. One evening, I got a text from an unknown number. "Jack, it's Claire. I heard you're in remission. I'm glad. I know you won't believe me, but I think about you a lot. I messed up. I'm sorry for everything." I read the text twice, my finger hovering over the screen. A small part of me wanted to reply, to ask why she did it despite knowing I was sick. But I didn't need answers anymore. I typed,
I made it through. Be well. Then I blocked the number. I set the phone down and opened my dad's pocket watch. Its steady ticking felt like the heartbeat of a survivor. Claire thought she could destroy me. But I'd stood up, stronger than ever. I stepped outside, looking at the Fox River shimmering under the moonlight. This was my home, my life, and I'd taken it all back. My dad used to say, "Time teaches patience, but justice teaches you to stand tall." I'd been patient, and justice had come. Now I stood tall, ready for whatever lay ahead.
By the Fox River, under the Wisconsin moonlight, I stood with my dad's pocket watch feeling victory not just over Claire but over fate itself. Claire had taken our $45,000, left me to face cancer alone, but I'd taken it all back, from the money to my health, from my dignity to a new life. Now, as the river's flow mixed with the watch's steady ticking, I knew it was time to look back on this journey, draw its lessons, and move forward with hope. This isn't just a story of justice, it's a story of rebirth. I sat on the wooden porch of my new cabin, steps from the Fox River, holding my dad's pocket watch. The moonlight danced on the water, casting shimmering ripples, and the watch's steady ticking felt like the heartbeat of a survivor. It had been 6 months since I moved to Wisconsin, 6 months since the doctor at Rush Hospital declared me in complete remission. The lymphoma, which once threatened to steal my life, was now just a shadow. But Claire, the woman who knew I was sick, knew I needed her, and still chose to take the money and run, had left a scar deeper than any chemo could. I thought about the darkest days. April 15th, 2024, when I called Claire from the Rush Hospital parking lot, my voice trembling, telling her I had cancer. She said okay, and 47 minutes later, transferred $45,000 from our joint account to her own. The text, "I didn't sign up for this," cut like a knife, sharper than the pain of chemo. I'd sat in my Portage Park backyard, watching the Chicago sunset, wondering if I had the strength to fight both cancer and betrayal. But I did. Not by screaming or lashing out. I did it the way my dad taught me, with patience, gathering the truth and letting justice speak for itself. With help from Uncle Tom, lawyer Laura, and friends like Nick, I built an airtight case. Bank statements, texts, Emily Carter's email. Each piece exposed Claire, forcing her to return the $45,000, give up all claims to the house, the Corvette, and the Wisconsin land. Her parents, Richard and Ellen, had to sell their Michigan cabin to cover the money. They still blamed me, but I didn't care. The truth had won, and that was all that mattered. I opened the watch, my fingers tracing its scratched glass. My dad, a steel mill worker in Chicago's South Side, lived a simple life, but one full of dignity. He was up at 5 a.m. every day, working to provide for me and my sister Sarah, never complaining. "Time teaches patience, Jack," he'd say. "But justice teaches you to stand tall." I'd been patient and justice had come. Now I stood tall, not just as a survivor, but as a man who'd found himself again. Life in Wisconsin is simpler than Chicago. My cabin, bought with the money from the Portage Park house sale, is small but enough. The garage fits the '67 Corvette. I'm not ready to sell it. Maybe because it reminds me of the days I poured sweat into restoring it, of what I can build from nothing. Nick's auto shop, 3 miles from the cabin, is where I've found my rhythm again. The smell of motor oil, the hum of engines, the feel of a wrench in my hand, it's all like medicine. Nick teases me. "You're working faster than you did in Chicago, Jack. Cancer make you tougher or what?" I laugh. Maybe it did. Sarah visits every month, bringing homemade cookies and stories about her students in Madison. "You make me proud," she said, once, as we sat by the Fox River, the 72-degree Fahrenheit sunlight making everything glow. "Not everyone comes through like you did." "You're like Mom," I replied, always knowing how to pick me up. But not every day is easy. Cancer could come back. The doctors remind me at every checkup, every blood test. I still see Claire's shadow in quiet moments. Not because I love her, but because her betrayal was a hard lesson. She knew I was sick, knew I needed the money for chemo, but still took our $45,000 and ran. I've forgiven her. Not for her sake, but for mine. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means I don't let her define me anymore. I think about Claire's last text, sent 3 months ago. "I'm sorry for everything," I'd replied. "I made it through. Be well." And I meant it. I don't need her apologies. Don't need her regret. I have my work, my home, my friends, and a future I built myself. I stood up, walking to the river's edge. The water flowed slowly, like the way I've learned to live. One day, one moment at a time.
My dad's pocket watch sat in my pocket. A reminder that time doesn't just heal. It builds. I've rebuilt my life. Not from revenge, but from dignity. Claire thought she could destroy me, but I proved her wrong. This is my story. A story of justice, patience, and rebirth. I hope it reminds you that no matter how hard life hits, you can always stand up stronger than before. Thank you all for following my story on Revenge with Ethan. If this inspired you, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss more emotional justice stories. Share your thoughts in the comments. What did you learn from Jack's journey? Write justice, if you believe justice always prevails. Or dignity if you think dignity is the greatest strength.